Welcome to another Ozarks Voices oral history interview, a project of Missouri State University Libraries and its Ozark Studies Institute initiative. I'm Craig Amason with the University Libraries, and today's date is Monday, January 27th, 2020. Our special guest is Mr. Keith and his wife, Becky. And we are at Keith Farm in Ash Grove, Missouri. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here and the privilege of interviewing you for this project. Just for the record, can you start off by telling us, Mr. Keith, when and where you were born?
I was born down the road 1 mile here in Greene County near Ash Grove in 1953. I was born, I'm the fourth generation on this land, and my wife, I'm not supposed to say when she was born, but she's a little younger than me. She was also born in the Ash Grove area, so we are lifelong residents.
Who were your parents, and what can you tell us about your early years?
My dad, Charles Robert Keith, was the only son of an only son on this our farm. His dad was Elmer Keith, which lived at this property that we're sitting at right now. My father lived west of me a mile. The three of us worked my whole entire life all together. We seen each other every day. All three of us was blessed with being able to make a living off this land without having to go outside and do a 9-to-5 type job or anything. And I always considered that a blessing back then. My father's mother is the one that was actually born on this land. Mm-hmm. And that was, what year was that? 1901 or 2.
Mm-hmm. So your family came into this property around the early 1900s? Is that correct?
My family got here in 1878.
Oh yeah.
And this land, a lot of people think this land was homestead, but from what I've gathered, or was always told, the railroad coming through bought all this territory. Uh-huh. And then when people come, I remember my grandpa said at the time, the train station at dArc was the end of the line at that time. Okay. And they got off there. They came from Ireland. And they bought this part of the land from the railroad, and I don't have any idea on price or anything. We have, this farm here is, about 600 acres on this property. They bought that off the railroad, and their name was Elson. Edwin Elson. That would be my great-grandmother's dad. Okay. And so, as I say, this stone was from their original fireplace right down here in the woods where they built their first little 2-room cabin. Then after that burned a few years, they moved up the road and built a bigger house, and that's where Becky and I live.
Okay. So, was the property roughly the same size that it is now? Has it shrunk? Has it increased?
No, the thing was, Ed Elson, my great-grandfather, he purchased, like I say, this part here, actually he purchased a little over 700 acres, and my grandmother had 7 brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. So the deal was he divided that equally among his children, and only one was interested in agriculture. Mm-hmm. So my grandfather and my grandmother was able to buy out all but one sibling, and that's how he accumulated this property here. So
it divided and then came back together under their ownership?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So you grew up on a farm, on this farm. Describe the farm operation and the role that you had in it when you were young, and when you started.
Well, farm kids started very young. And nowadays I think kids would think they were being, what am I doing? Why am I being punished? Especially dairy farm kids. And back in the old days, even if you didn't commercially milk, about everybody had a few milk cows and milked by hand when I was in the early 50s. Mm-hmm. My grandfather on my mom's side, they had 10 old cows, and when we went down there, we would hand milk all them. But anyway, we started early. I had a tractor wreck when I was 8, and broke my arm right out here raking hay. The old saying, do as I do, not as I say. I always want to make a picture of the fence where this tractor wreck happened. I had seen my dad come in on tractors, and my dad was kind of going high gear all the time. He got a lot done, but he tore up a few things. But anyway, I would see him coming in pretty fast on tractors, shut the key off and jump off of them as the tractor would wind down and die. Well, to a little 7 and 8 year old kid, that was pretty cool. So I was out here raking hay. They was in the house here they were eating dinner and getting ready to go bale the hay. So I was getting done, and I thought, well, you know, that's pretty cool. I'm by myself. I won't get in trouble. I'm gonna pull that trick, you know. Well, it was a hot day, and I jumped off, turned the key off, and jumped off this little Ford Jubilee tractor. And so I jumped off, got clear, and thought, that tractor's not dying. It was dieseling, you know. It was hot, and it wouldn't die. And all of a sudden, it starts turning and going through my windrows. And I thought, oh my, I've got to catch that thing. Well, I finally caught it, and I don't know if I hit my head or if I'm just able to black it out. Somehow, I wake up and I'm in a windrow of hay, and it's dead quiet, and I look around, that tractor is submerged, went through a fence and submerged in this pond back here. Nothing but the blinker light on the fender is the only thing you can see. Of course, the rake's was out of the water. And I remember thinking, as a little kid would, what am I going to tell them happened? It's not my fault. So anyway, I start to get up, and my right arm's broke. And I'd never seen a broken arm. I pull that up, and I start screaming bloody murder, but they were in the house, and I had to walk about a half a mile to the house, holding this arm, screaming bloody murder. And anyway, my sister, that's a school teacher at Willard, she always said, Dad, if some kid come and told me that story, I'd have to turn them in now, and they'd be arrested probably for child abuse. So we had to start very young.
Very young, yeah.
And I've got neighbor kids that, you know, they started 7 or 8 years old. They started working almost like a full-time hard hand, and we never thought nothing about it, you know, just that's what you do when you're...
That was expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't say, okay, how much you gonna pay me, or, you know, I want a big allowance or nothing. It's just, that's what farm boys, especially,
yeah.
Usually both farm boys and girls, but especially the farm boys, that was just expected.
What all were your chores?
Well, when I was young, we milked cows. Of course, this was a farming community here in Ash Grove. This was pretty good land here. So back in that day, in the 50s, we had the dairy. My grandpa always had a bunch of hogs, had sows raising pigs. We had sheep besides the beef cattle. So, we had a little bit of everything. And then my grandpa, Keith, he was the cowboy. So we had horses and stuff. So, we had everything to take care of. And so we were busy. We were quite busy. Feeding hay, just everything. Bedding down the cattle, calves in the barn. And I didn't have to start milking. We had a hard man until I was 10 or so. We had a helper helping. And I remember my dad and mom went on a vacation to Seattle, Washington. And I think when they left on the vacation, I was actually 11. But they said, we're going on vacation, and you're going to milk the cows. I still look back at that thinking, I'm 11, and they're leaving for a week-long trip. Of course, my grandpa lived a mile away, you know? Yeah. But he never fooled with the dairy. He was the beef and the other. My dad was the dairyman, and so it was up to me to milk about 80 cows.
Was that pretty scary?
Oh, I was looking forward to it, You're a kid. Yeah. But I'd been milking, a year probably, and apparently they thought I knew what I was doing, I guess.
And did you have any problems while they were gone?
I don't remember anything too big. Of course, it was summertime. It wasn't in the bitter cold or nothing like that. But that's been a long time ago. I don't remember having any problems.
That's great.
But yeah, that was the last. In '62, my folks went out. My mom had 2 sisters in Seattle. In '62, the World's Fair was in Seattle.
Oh yeah.
And that was the last family vacation. Then the next year, 2 years later, that's when they left, and I become a dairyman then.
Right.
And I dairied till just, in 96 we sold out the cows.
So the two of you met in high school, which means you went to high school. So did you finish high school?
We went to high school together. She was, how old were you on our first date?
Well, I was almost 15, but I was 14. I don't know what my mother was doing.
So where'd you go to school?
We went to Astro. I went to grade school in dArc. Well, I'm right in the middle. I could have went either way, but I had more friends that I went to church with and stuff that went to the dArc school, so I chose to go to dArc. Oh, plus they had a gymnasium inside their school, and I thought that was cool.
Yep.
But they consolidated to where junior high all went together, so at junior high age, I started going to Astro, and I don't know, this gal caught my eye, is that the way it was, or did you catch mine? Anyway, no, she just barely, but she was 14 on our first date, and I guess we've hit it off because we're still together.
That's great.
Still together.
Did most of the kids in the farming community here go to school?
Yeah. In the 50s, grade school, I bet half of the kids, folks, were full-time farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of them, then probably a fourth of them were farmers with a job on the side or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe a fourth of them had city jobs. But yeah, it has changed so much from when we were in school.
Did you, you told me that you had siblings.
Mm-hmm.
Were your siblings involved with the farm?
You know, they helped. If we needed a hay raker or something, they did rake hay and stuff a little bit. But I don't know, I was pretty well told that you're going to be the farmer. You know, it was pretty well, like my grandpa was pretty stern. I just had the mindset from the very beginning, okay, I'm going to pass this to your daddy, he's going to pass that to you, and you're going to pass that. And so far, we've all had one son, and so that's the way it's kind of headed.
So one male, and
Yes.
so that
Yeah.
sort of made it the default.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you talked about how you became a dairy farmer by default. Was there a time where you said, yeah, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, apparently there was, because I done it for a lot, almost 40 years, I guess. My dad, I think he must have started just, I don't know, in the late 40s, I guess, when he started the dairy, built a grade A barn. And milking was,
It's a good
apparently,
living.
it was a pretty
It's
good
a
living.
good living there, especially in the 60s.
Yes, right.
50s and 60s. Yeah, he was a hard worker. My uncle that always helped on the farm said he liked to work hard so he could play hard. My dad, he liked to fly. And back then, it was good enough he could buy new, not just an old wore out airplane. He could buy new airplanes. And we've got it right. You just drove by a landing strip out here. And he always flew airplanes and stuff.
Just for enjoyment or part of the farming operation?
Just for enjoyment. He probably owned a half a dozen airplanes or so. And my mom said he quit in about 63 or 4, and she always told me, said he wanted to quit before you got interested and wanted to, but he waited too long. I got my license in 73, and we flew for, about 30 years, I guess, or so.
Wow.
Just.
We kind of flew while it was still affordable.
Well, it was
Yeah,
affordable
and
and dairy was still good.
On personal play, but
Yeah.
In the late 80s, he decided he was getting old enough that he wanted to start traveling, and dairy farming ties you down.
Sure.
I mean, it ties you down. If you don't have family or somebody you can really trust, I mean, you're going to have to stay close to the house.
It's very labor intensive operation.
Very, very. And it doesn't matter whether it's 10 below or 110, it's got to get done.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was, when they had the buyout, which, I don't know, was that mid-80s? He said, let's put in a bid. He wanted to maybe, and I said, well, that's it. You still get to make the final say, if you want to do that, that's fine. And we put in a bid, and we were just, I don't know, just a little bit off of what they were doing to buy us out, you know, the dairy part. So that didn't happen then, and he was I could tell he was kind of bummed, and so when my grandpa died in '87, we kind of did some rearranging, and she and I ended up, I mean, we were all a family farm, but we kind of bought the dairy part out and said, okay, we'll give you a percentage of the check, and you can start getting your rocking chair money and go out and travel. You know, he loved to travel and stuff. So that's when we kind of took over things, and he kind of retired.
Yeah.
But he was always here to help, and he did a lot, but it's where he could get cut loose and run around.
Right, and that was sort of a decisive moment where it's
now
it's on your shoulders.
Yeah,
that
right.
kind of thing.
Right.
So farming for most of your life has been your primary source of income. Other than what's going on now, we'll get to that a few minutes later. But other than what's going on now, was there any other business interest outside farming for you?
No, we have always been totally agriculture. The dairy, the beef cattle. Now, we quit, like I say, when my grandfather was there, Elmer, we called him Keith, Pecan Pete. He dabbled, he said, you know, we need a little bit of everything, because he said, some years this is going to be bad and this is going to carry you through. Some years this will be, and that was his philosophy. And so, after he was gone, we quit doing sheep and hogs, and just pretty well depended on the dairy and beef cattle. And then a little later on, we started seeing a need, well, when the round balers took over, square hay was starting to be hard to find. And we found, like I say, we messed around with horses a little bit and got acquainted with the cowboy community. We found out a lot of cowboys are looking for alfalfa square hay.
Okay.
And so we kind of switched over when our kids were young and could kind of come up with some hands to help us buck hay. We got pretty heavy into alfalfa, square alfalfa hay. But I told all my customers, which we didn't have a large business of alfalfa hay, but I told them, I said, now when these last 2 fields wear out, I said, my kids are getting old and they're going off to do their own thing, or, you know, want to do their other thing. I said, we're probably going to park that baler. So anyway, I don't remember what year it was that we sold our last bale of hay to Steve Line quarter horses up here north of Springfield.
Yeah.
People, but they were our last customers to buy a bale of hay off of us for $4 a bale.
$4 a bale.
I don't know what it is now.
Yeah.
May not. I
That,
don't
that
know.
seemed quite a bit at
Well,
that
we thought we
time.
were doing good.
Yeah.
Don't tell Steve that. We thought we was getting to him.
That's great. Well, you said you had sheep and hogs, is that correct? What was the decision? Why was there a decision not to do that anymore? Was it just not profitable? Or?
Well, like I say, my grandfather was that was more his end. He wanted to be diversified and have a little
Right.
And when he got older, I guess we kept him till he was just old, so, you know, he couldn't hardly do it anymore.
Right.
I guess it was just that decision that, you know, that was kind of his end that I helped him do,
But you could do better just concentrating on
I
a few
mean,
things and being so
just like,
diversified.
you know, everything you've got to have a big amount, you know, back in the old days, you could have just a few sows, you know.
Right.
And you could have 50 head of sheep, you know. Well, now what would you need to make a living with? You know, you'd have to have a whole hog farm, you know.
Right.
To make any kind of money at all. Back then, you just, like I say, you had a few resources to bring in a little of everything.
Moving from dairy to beef, do you think that was a trend at the time that you were doing it among other farmers in the area?
Yeah, a lot of them were quitting milking.
It got to be where the price of the feed for the cattle, almost that was as big as what we were making.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's what
Expenses.
happened with so many of them around
Yeah.
this area.
A lot of dairy farmers, because of that, I mean, we were just doing it for our exercise. We used to joke about how we ought to be able to figure out a better way to get our exercise. But a lot of farmers went to just raising heifers and selling them. to go to Texas and I guess California and places where they had, you know, the big humongous dairy farms and stuff. But a lot of them went to raising the heifers. And we did that for quite a few years and until we kind of stumbled into this other deal here.
Yeah. Was it difficult to find labor for dairy farms as time went by, or was the labor always available?
It's
to find really good dependable
to find
people
really good.
that really cared, because when you have a dairy, you have to care. You can't just go through the motions.
Yeah, you gotta have somebody that.
We did. We had some.
Yeah.
We were able to find some that did care.
Yeah, we had
in this area.
a couple of neighbors that I guess we shouldn't mention their name, but they were really good help and stuff. And, you know, we felt like that was almost kind of a freakish deal to find somebody that trustworthy and that good, you know, to help us. But yeah, I know a lot of them resorted to maybe getting some foreign help and stuff, you know, back then, and we didn't want to do that. So we just decided, you know, let's call it quits. And on June the 28th of '96.
You remember the date?
Well, I still got the calendar hanging circled on there. I mean, you know, when you're raised,
of course,
I miss so much of my kids in school.
Yeah.
She had to take them to this.
Yeah.
Dad had to stay home and
of course
feed cows and so. And I don't mean to sound resentful, but I mean I missed it. I missed a lot. Of that.
Sure.
And so I look back on that. That's a special day. I was kidding. We was up at Cracker Barrel getting ready to pay one time when somebody seen me and they knew I'd quit milking, you know, and they said, well, how long's it been since? And I said, it's been 3 years. You know, I had the date and the month and I said, since I got out of prison. And they knew. And she said this lady turned and looked at me and kind of backed up a little bit. And I think she said, we sold our dairy cows then. He wasn't a jailbird. You know?
But I'm sure it felt like that
sometimes.
sometimes.
It felt like.
It was quite a feeling. Of course, we had always taken our cattle to town in our own trailers and stuff, but that was a big herd, so we called.
We had a bunch of neighbors come and load out, and to see that last trailer going over the hill with those cows, thinking that was the last.
That was the last time.
That's an emotional time.
It was a really feeling,
sure.
I mean, I just done that since I was 10, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a weird feeling. Plus, the one thing about the dairy farm, every 2 weeks you did have a check in the mail. It might not have been a great check or, you know, but all of a sudden, hey, we don't have any steady in, you know.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Were you selling to a co-op or what were you?
Yeah, Mid-Am. For a long time it was called Producers Creamery up in Springfield, then Mid-America Dairy.
I don't know what it's called now.
I think it's Farmers of America or something now or something like that. But yeah.
But dairying was good.
Yeah, it was good for the.
It put food on our table and
sure.
put shoes on our kids'
On your
feet.
kids'
So
feet,
it was good. But
So after that, it was just livestock and hay production.
After that,
just cattle.
Cattle, fescue seed. We combine fescue seed every year, and then sold hay. Yeah.
Okay, and you're still doing that.
We still, I'm renting a lot of land out to an old boy named Danny McCurry. Danny and Teresa McCurry that own McCurry Trailers up on Kearney Street. There's an ad. I'm gonna try to get a kickback on that. So anyway, no, Danny and Teresa, they're good friends of ours. We went to church for years together, and we started this other little sideline, and I was probably belly aching about how much work I got to do to get all this done, this. And Danny just threw it out a little bit. He said, why don't we talk about you maybe letting me run some cattle on some of that land, you slowing down a little bit. And that's kind of how this deal, he runs about 200 cows on the place. I'm still doing fescue seed and hay, and then he buys all the hay that I do. So it really works good because he knows all his hay's already, there for next year, and I know that hay's already sold.
It's sold, sure.
So that's really worked out. We've done that for what, 10 or 12?
That's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah. It is, and we both trust each other. I mean, I'd rather me be cheated than him, and he that same way they are.
Sure. When you had your own cattle, how were you marketing and selling?
Well, we were still in the old day. I guess we got on a little bit of the new stockyards. That when we were doing heifers, we sold them pretty well to Blancet's down at Ozarks.
Okay.
The dairy heifers and stuff. Back in the old days, at the old stockyards, that's where most of my memories are, going up and getting in line on Division Street to sell cattle at the stockyards.
Yeah. Yeah. That was probably a pretty big deal. How often did that happen?
Oh, I don't know. We would probably go to the yards, I don't know, with the beef cattle. We used to always sell all the steers off of the dairy. We'd keep our heifers for replacement, and then we would cut and raise their Holstein steers. And then usually, Grandpa would go up and buy more steers and raise on the other. We've got another farm over north of here. And so, I don't know, half a dozen times a year we'd take beef to sell that away, and then you get a cow, that wears out or whatever, that, lots of times you'd go up just for a cow or two, but it was a fun time.
Seems like we were up there.
Well, you go quite a bit.
Anyway, but
To
it
kids.
was always,
To kids, you had other farm kids you seen, it was
Sure,
kinda like.
sure. That's a social thing as much as it is a business.
Yeah, and I tell our kids, I said, I really considered it a farming community. Like I say, half the kids were farmers. I remember when we were in school in Bois, we got to go to the circus, and we got off the end of the year for a school picnic to Doling Park, and then we got off one day to go to John Deere Day. The John Deere dealership was up on Division Street and National, and every year it was kind of like the new car show day, John Deere had a show day, and you went to the Tower Theater, and John Deere sent out this movie of all the fabulous new equipment and how it was.
Yeah.
You got to go to that movie, and then you went over to the implement, over to John Deere, and they had us a meal of ham sandwiches and chocolate milk and Guy's potato chips. And I still remember that, and they'd have door prizes, but all the kids got, the farm kids, we were treated special. We got off that day to go to John Deere Day.
That's great, yeah.
But I said, boy, that really shows you that we were a farming community
Yeah, sure.
in that era,
Did you have a county fair during that time?
Oh, yeah.
And did you get off for the county fair? Or?
That was always in summer.
Okay.
And in our day, there was no summer school.
Okay.
No, you didn't
Yeah,
go to school till up in September, because that's
Right.
was getting the corn in the
Sure.
silo and stuff, and the last hay cutting
and
down.
another thing about the school system, they didn't start school till after September.
Right.
So they could get all their,
So all the,
Yeah, sure,
all the
sure.
harvest was over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it had to snow pretty deep before they called school off back in the old days. It's a different world.
that was
Yeah.
back when, the fences could be almost, the drifts anyway, would topple over the.
Yeah, a lot
fence.
more snow back then than
Yeah.
you get now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever take advantage of services provided by the university system of Missouri, the extension office, any of those? And do you know anybody who did?
Oh, back in the old days, and I don't know too much about it, so I shouldn't even, I guess, but they had what they call putting fields in land bank, and they would give you, and I have no idea how much it was, they would give you a little bit just to park a field for a year or two. And I remember Grandpa always going up to the ASCS office and, figuring out which fields we're going to put in land bank for a year or two. They did that. They would come down and want us to try some different things, and they would share the planning cost and stuff. I remember of them doing that back when we were doing more grain and planting and stuff. And I guess.
Was it one of the last time the field, north there, that maybe the white
Caucasian blue stem, they wanted us to try some, they wanted us to try some up here, and that's been how many years ago?
That's been a few years
Probably
ago, but I
27
still
years
remember
ago,
it.
but,
We tried it.
yeah.
What would you say are the biggest benefits to farming in the Ozarks, in this area?
Well, I think most people get to eat.
That's a pretty big benefit, isn't it?
No, you know, all kidding aside, you know, you always think of the people that, you know, our stars and our celebrities, you know, get all the talk. But I think about the people that feed us,
Yeah.
farmers, doctors, and
Sure.
police and soldiers. I mean, you know, those
Sure.
are people that keep all the deal going and
Yeah.
keep it safe.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but as far as this community,
It was a good, also, it was a good, atmosphere to raise children.
Okay.
Yeah. It was.
we, they would set me off there again when I was young. They'd go over and get me raking hay or whatever, and when I was done, or when to just walk home, you know, maybe get out and catch a ride. You know, we've got a couple places that are a mile or two away from our house.
Yeah.
They didn't think a thing about, well, just jump in and have somebody bring you home. You know, jump on the road and hitchhike home. You know. And
Sure.
so I mean, it was a safe, very fun time to live in
Yeah.
the 50s and the 60s. But yeah, it was a very good 4-H's. Our kids were all raised on horseback and stuff. Area kids, I mean, they all had horses or ponies or pony carts. And the kids would all get together and go take on their own, just get a trail ride going, you know. And we'd tell them, you be home before dark. And
Yeah.
this time or two, we had to go out and look for them. But I mean, I got in on that. A lot of my friends, that's what we would do. We'd
Sure.
saddle up and we'd say, okay, we're going to meet at the dArc store and get us some candy bars and soda pop, put in our bags, and we just ride all
Good
day.
memories, yeah.
And you know, the kids, you know, the parents didn't worry about us at all, you know, as far as somebody bothering us or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a wonderful place. I just thought, you was talking about government deals. Just a few years ago, when we had the drought, we got a government well back here, and we got the first one dug, and the governor come down, and we were
Really?
on TV with him. We forgot about that. Well,
Yeah, we're definitely still using that well.
we're using that well.
So the government paid to dig the wells?
They paid like
They paid
75%
so much.
Okay,
to help
okay.
us dig up when all the ponds were drying up.
Right.
But yeah, that was just a few years ago. But yeah, we got to meet the governor.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and you probably, even though you've lived here all your life and farmed here all your life, you probably have an idea of what farming is in other areas of the country. What would you say are the greatest challenges of farming in this area as opposed to elsewhere?
Well, the weather can be, but I mean, I guess weather is going to be everywhere. Like I was talking about my grandpa saying, one year this is going to be good, one year this is going to be bad. I think that's one thing that has, like our kids want to keep the land, but they don't want to farm the land.
Right, sure.
Because it's a risky business. It's a dangerous business.
Yeah.
I think the weather has a lot, just like I say, a drought. I mean, that can mess you up. You know,
Yeah,
you're
sure.
thinking if you're selling alfalfa hay and it don't rain.
Yeah.
I remember one year we went down, we planted 30 acres. I thought we had it all ready to sow in alfalfa, and they was given a pretty good chance of rain the next day. I said, we got to get up early and get, I think we was still milking then and everything. So we had a long day and we went and sowed that field, got it done. Well, about midnight we start hearing it and it starts raining. I'm thinking, oh good, you know, we're going to get that. And we wake up and it's pouring and it's pouring. And that washed that field plumb out. So we had to totally go it washed a lot of places that we had to work up, just start plumb over. So that whole, you know, was wasted. But our kids, they've seen that, of how you just got to bite your lip and have faith in the Lord above that He's going to take care of you and start over, you know.
Right.
And young people, I don't think they're quite wanting to take that much of a risk with that much work, you know. I mean, it's a lot of work to start over and replant that whole field again.
Sure.
But again, I wouldn't trade, you know, I badmouthed it some when I was irritated.
Of course.
But I mean, I feel so blessed of the life that I've had, the raising. You know, we worked hard, but yet I think that's taught us, you know, it's who we are.
Sure.
We're
That's
still
who,
working on it.
and we're still working hard. It's a little different type of work.
There's not a great,
Uh,
a plan, trying to think of the word.
Well, you've seen how farming has changed, and your operation here has changed, and so I want to explore a little bit about what you're doing now, because obviously technology has had an impact on what you do, and even more so now that you're sort of moving into an entertainment type of operation.
I think now, I don't guess we're totally classified as a, what do they call it, agritourism,
Right.
but we're kind of teeter-totter
Yeah.
on that department there. A few years back, out of necessity, we cleaned out a barn to have a wedding for our son and his wife, future wife, Melissa, and it turned out pretty nice, and we had neighbors and family that said, hey, could we borrow that barn? And it kind of snowballed into what we're sitting in right now. So we're performing weddings, or hosting weddings and events here on our farm now.
Yep. And that has been worth the investment, you think?
Yeah, it has. We've been doing it, well, actually, that was about 11 or 12 years ago, and we built a nice, I think it's a nice venue here that we can go year-round with. And we stay busy just about every week.
And your son is very involved in that.
My son Nick and his wife Melissa, they're part owners. They're both professional DJs, and so they're the front people. We're the back people. We mow the
back of
yard.
the house.
we mow the yard and wash the windows. Now they let us off, but if we need off, we can get away. But it's a fun business.
It is?
Yes.
Yeah.
An undertaker used to go to church with us before he passed away. He used to tease me about, he said, I really envy your business. He said, people come to you excited and joyful and, oh boy, we want to have a wedding at your place. And he said, people that come to my place, it's sad.
It's
and
pretty
sorrow.
sad, yeah,
He said, I'd trade places with you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But he looked at me and winked. He said, but everybody has to die. But I said, John, some people get married twice.
He will never bury anybody twice.
I don't think so.
That's great. Well, this is almost like an ideal retirement gig for you guys, right?
It is. It's work, but it's not real physically hard work.
And not as intense.
Not as intense.
And not twice like the dairy.
Yeah.
You definitely had that twice a day.
Yeah. But now you do once in a while, very rarely, I will say, because we do live in a good part of the world. Very rarely do we have anybody just psycho crazy. I don't know how to put it.
Yeah.
There are some people you can't satisfy.
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't matter what you do. That wasn't good enough.
That's the service industry.
But
That's
we
just
very, very rarely have that. Most people.
And we do. We bend over backwards.
We do.
Try to keep people happy.
Sure.
And anyway.
But yeah, it's a very interesting business. It's a very fun business. My friends tease me about, don't you wish you could go out on Saturday night? I said, well, think about it. These guys are bringing a good meal to me and then paying me on top of that. So,
That's right.
so I try to dig it back a little bit. But yeah, it keeps us busy, but we can get away some, and it's a joyful occasion, and it's a fun business.
Do you think that farmers in the region need to look at opportunities like this, or look for ways to make their farms profitable as it becomes more and more difficult to make a farm profitable?
Well, there are very, very few of the families left that still own all their land and are just making a living off that land. There are a few. There are a few around. But most of them are having to supplement with a town job or some, maybe their own business, but it may not be you know, on the land
Yeah.
or whatever, but, yeah, I think you're gonna have to do something, to supplement, you know.
Mhm.
Especially in Greene County, it seems
Mhm.
like, I
But
mean,
Greene County is getting so tempting, I mean, real estate and stuff. I mean, most of the family farms around us, and, oh gosh, I don't know what percent, but most of them, when that last generation, you know, the farm generation passed on, most of them kids said, that's too big a risk. And
Mhm.
boy, I can get how much an acre, or,
Yeah.
you know, and that's where it's all headed, I'm afraid. A lot of the farmers were not upset, but weren't real happy with Ed and Ted Richter selling to the conservation back in 30 years ago. And I told everybody at the time, even, I mean, you know, they said, well, look at all that brush, all the trees they're letting grow up. I would a lot rather have that
Right.
than a house here, and a house here, and a
Yeah.
house
A
here.
development, sure.
I still feel like I live by myself. Now, I have a lot of company on the road going hunting and stuff, you know.
Sure.
But I would rather it be that way.
Uh-huh.
And they hit us up hard about selling to the conservation back then, but I just, thank goodness, none of us were interested.
Uh-huh.
And
So your son's generation, is it becoming more and more difficult for them to
Well-
embrace farming, or have they just given up the idea of farming altogether? Or
I think unless you are born into it or marry into it, it just would almost be impossible to buy 500 acres. And you're gonna have to have at least 400, 500, or 600 acres, I think, you know.
to make it go up?
So, I mean, it just would almost be impossible to do that.
and like our son, he's definitely not interested in the
Agriculture.
agriculture part of it.
But he does,
Yeah.
but he sees the heritage and he said, Dad, I don't think me or the girls are interested in ever selling any of it.
And do you think that's a common trend now, that they like the land, they like the heritage, but they just can't embrace the work itself?
I don't know, because like I say, we're starting to see more and more land divided up and sold.
Yeah.
I think the ones that have some roots, like our kids were made to work and help us. You know, we want them to learn and be a part of it. So they've got some roots and some ties to the land. A lot of kids that didn't have to have chores or have to work or do hard, I think a lot of them just didn't get tied to it, you know. So I think they don't care. I think they see that dollar of, hey, it's worth how much an acre, you know?
Right.
So I'm afraid a lot of it is going to be gone before long.
Has the large industrial farm complex had an impact on that as well, with gigantic farms being, it's almost impossible to compete?
I guess, I'm trying to think if we've really had, in this immediate area, I don't know. I've kind of, like I say, we've sold out the cattle park and stuff. I've kind of gotten away from going to the stockyards and going down to the local cafe and eating with the other farm people. I've kind of gotten away from that to really hear their opinions on that. So I can't probably answer that.
I was just curious if that has had an impact or not. How do you envision the future of farming in the Ozarks? Is it a bright future, you think?
I'd like to say yes, but I don't think I can. I think, you know, we've got friends that live down around Golden City and Lockwood. I think each year it's like it moves it out a little bit farther. Like they talk about their neighbors of all still raising crops and cattle and stuff, you know, and still they're pretty well. The trucks, the vehicles at school are all 4-wheel drive pickups. You know, it's still farm kids. I'm afraid you will see that moving farther and farther away from Springfield because I think we're just getting swallowed up.
By the
It's going to be
city,
too tempted for this land. Now I do wonder about energy, solar energy, you know, wind, stuff like that, maybe before long. I seen south of Nixa, we drove through Nixa the other day, and there was about 40 acres of solar panels out there and stuff. And, you know, maybe something there we need to look into or someday.
Yeah, because you have to have open land for it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pretty passive kind of thing, but I guess eventually it may be lucrative.
I don't know.
Well, if someone were considering becoming a farmer today in this area, what advice would you give them? If somebody I just talked to, the reason I say I just talked to a guy the other day who, he and his wife bought a small orchard down near Branson, and I thought, wow, that's gutsy. So what advice would you give them?
Well, you better not be lazy. And you better have some gravel in your gut, because there's a lot of jobs that are not pretty on a farm. I mean, you have to, in the old days especially, we did everything. You know, nowadays, we get a lot of our fencing done by fencing people, you know. I mean, they've got the equipment, they can build you a mile of fence just lickety-split, you know. I remember in the old days, we went back to the hedgerow, we cut the hedge, and I tell you, I still don't see how we lived through all of it. I still remember them old sawmills we'd set up with a belt drive tractor, and we'd take them posts and sharpen them posts and wooden posts, and we still got, I don't know if you went around our place or not, but we still got quite a few of those hedge posts still along the fence over here that we drove in. But I can still hear that loud noise of cutting those, sharpening them posts and stuff, and well, once in a while they'd kick back or the belt didn't come off that tractor, but how in the world more people
didn't get hurt or killed,
dismembered or killed?
Exactly.
All the stuff that we did. I know we did a survey, somebody, Missouri Ruralists, I think, called us one time, wanted to know if we do a farm survey or something, and it was on farm safety, and they said, do you realize that, I think at that time, farming was the most dangerous job in Missouri.
Sure.
And I thought it was probably would be farmers, you know, farming tractors, because, I mean, used to, you'd always hear about tractors rolling over on somebody or falling off and getting in them equipment. But it was actually livestock, which killed more farmers than anything.
Really?
Yes. And I don't remember how many times, I don't know if you've been around hogs or not. Hogs get really mean around sowing time or pigging time, and I don't know how many farmers would come and they'd be all stove up or big old, oh yeah, the sow got me, you know, got in to feed, get a pig or whatever, and the sow got me down, and there was a lot of hogs. You know, you don't think of a hog as being that dangerous, but there was a lot of injuries, and they get big.
Yeah, they do, big and heavy, yeah.
But anyway, I'd say they need a lot of nerve, a lot of gravel in their guts, a lot of faith in the Lord above, and a good woman.
Well, that speaks to you. That's what I was going to ask. So, if a young man had decided he was going to be a farmer, what advice would you give to his spouse?
You know, you just hang in there. I would advise them to be to enjoy the good times, but also save up for the harder times, and to be smart with your investment, and you know. It's just a good place to raise a family. It is. You can teach your children.
Lots of rules for life.
Yeah.
Lots of rules for life. I think a lot of farm people, I bumped into a cousin, a distant cousin, and was talking about her actual folks that we used to go out. They had a farm out on the border of Kansas. And I said, you know, some of the funnest Christmas get-togethers was at your folks' house out there. And I said, I don't mean to sound like this, but your folks, all they had was marbles. We used to walk on stilts. We'd go fishing, and we'd play Monopoly. I said, you know, they never had they didn't have a go-kart or a motorbike or.
Right.
I said, that's still some of the funnest times I remember to go stay with your mom and dad. And, you know, I think that's something farm people, they learn to enjoy what the Lord gives them, you know, nature and, you know, a pretty sunrise and a pretty sunset and peace and quiet and stuff.
Just simple.
So you've got to.
You got to appreciate that. Also, as a wife, I was, you know, if he told me to go out and rake hay, if he told me to go out mow hay, I never, you know, it was fine. You know.
She
to hang in there.
She was, and now I never did. have her go to the milk bar. And I said, you know what, when I come in at night, I want you to smell like a woman.
I went to that.
She did a couple of times when I got down with a kidney infection or something one time, and her and the kids went down and milked a couple, 2 or 3 times when I thought I was gonna die. But, on the most part, I had her, but she did, she raked and baled a lot of hay, and
That's
even
great.
bucked a lot of hay. She dragged hay for me.
That's great.
But
That's
anyway,
great.
I hope she would never trade the life we've had. I know I wouldn't.
That's great.
God has been good.
That's great. Thank you very much. This
Well,
is
you're quite well.